Usually you'll find me doing videos about what's going on in the woods or about our pet birds, but I want to do something different this week. I do spend a lot of time up here in the woods, but I have a day job as well, and I'm usually trying to encourage the use of renewable energy or energy efficiency and mitigating climate change in general. My background is that I studied a degree and PhD in engineering and then went on to do a master's in renewable energy a few years later. So I've always come at this from a kind of practical and technical point of view. Now, I think at the moment there's a lot of hot air from politicians everywhere about their climate solutions, but ultimately the atmosphere doesn't respond to promises, it responds to reductions in emissions of carbon dioxide, methane and other greenhouse gases. Now, those emissions have actually been rising steadily over the past 20 years, and they've only really dipped when we've had a pandemic and a financial crash, neither of which are events I'd want to see repeated. So with my engineering background, I prefer to focus on the data and analysis rather than getting into the politics. And I usually scour the internet to find satellite data on climate change and see what the latest scientific research is. Now, if you'd asked me 10 years ago what I thought our chances were, I'd have said with a massive shift in societal values, we could have used the technology available at the time to cut fossil fuel emissions drastically, and that could have avoided the worst impacts of climate change, whilst acknowledging that there were still already serious impacts being felt at that time, especially in the global south. But now, in late 2024, we've shot past the 1.5 degrees threshold well ahead of schedule, and we've got severe storms, fires, floods and droughts wrecking lives and livelihoods across the world. Now, since I started in this field, there's been much talk about how many years left we have to act, but always with the line of it's not too late, for fear of creating apathy. For me, the question, though, is too late for what? It's already too late to prevent the severe weather that we're seeing today. That's going to carry on and it's going to get worse, even if greenhouse gas emissions stopped right away, because there's a lag in the climate system responding to past emissions. Now, that doesn't mean I think we should stop taking action. In fact, every extra tonne of greenhouse gas emissions makes the situation worse, so every tonne saved is still worthwhile. But in deciding what's the right thing for me to do, I've got to be realistic about what's possible. This is especially relevant this week, when Donald Trump has just been elected for his second term as President of the USA. From a climate point of view, it's clear that Trump in the White House means the US won't be cutting its emissions dramatically anytime in the next few years. Given that the climate system has already passed some tipping points and is teetering on the edge of other tipping points, this development in the USA is going to have an impact on what is actually possible in the coming years and what's likely to happen as a result. So the election of Trump doesn't make me despair, though, and I know people vote on a complex range of issues, and if someone can't afford to put food on the table, then it's fairly likely that climate change isn't going to be their top priority. There's a lot of other really bad things happening in people's lives that they need to focus on sorting out. And actually, some recent Green government policies have widened the gap between rich and poor. His election reminds me of something I've believed for a long time, though, that our successes in climate change will be despite government, not because of it. They will be the result of action by individuals and communities who've taken matters into their own hands. And by that I mean that they'll have focused on what their community needs to thrive. And so that could be in the areas of energy, water, food, housing, transport, but not just those physical community assets, also thinking about the skills that the people who make up the community have and what their networks with each other are. Because I think in difficult times, we need to have people we can count on to provide help when it's needed, when things are going wrong. So I'm still managing the woodland, I'm still encouraging energy efficiency at work, I'm still supporting local community initiatives like the Community Garden, Repair Cafe and Swap Shop. I'm carrying on building networks of people in my town. And I think in times like this, the best a person can do is look for things that they can set up or join that are fun, build community networks and build resilience in a low carbon way. Things like this are a win-win, as networks and resilience are what enable a community to take action to cut greenhouse gas emissions, but they're also what will help that community cope with the impacts of climate change that are already here and the impacts that are still to come.